it's a shock when you realise your arms aren't long enough and you need glasses. Those who've been there know what I'm talking about. Those who don't, you think, oh, that's what she was going on about, but it happens to you. Right.
Just point to me in terms of slides.
All right, yeah. You're going to get it full screen?
Yeah.
Fantastic. Right, okay. So, I had this idea, what am I going to talk about today? And then I kept on having, and then that song came on the radio, Let's Talk About Sex. I thought, that's what I'm going to call this today. Because I've been working, last 15 years of my career, I've been working with young people who've experienced sexual exploitation. And that's boys as well as girls. Most of the perpetrators, the abusers, have been men, but there are some females in that as well. And in my 15 years of working with this client group, where I haven't, and I'm always looking at, because I've been doing it for a long time, I look at trends where I've not been able to support a young person in moving forward with their life. And each time I've not been able to work with a child because the family haven't wanted to work with me, the parents haven't wanted to really listen and support their child, and they keep bringing the mistakes the young person has made up and go round and round in circles and not give that young person a chance. And sometimes we've been supporting young people who've gone back into school even though it's been very difficult for them because people know their business and they've been bullied in school. But they've gone back into school, they've got back into education, they've broken away from that abusive relationship, but still their parent or parents keep reminding them about what they've done in the past. And because of that, they've not been able to move forward, and then they keep repeating themselves in making unwise decisions about relationships and keeping safe. So I feel very strongly that, I'm a professional, I just go in for a short amount of time into that family's life. Short amount of time can be sometimes 8 weeks to 2 years. But in the scheme of things, that child and that parent are with each other for life. And we've got to make sure we support them in order to make sure they can keep each other safe and have that support from within. So when I was at school, all I learned was about the biology of sex. I didn't learn about the emotion that sex could be very emotionally draining and confusing. I didn't even know it could be pleasurable. I presume it was, because it was mentioned a lot, but you didn't know. There was no way of knowing what bits of your body make things pleasurable. It was just about very much the biology of it. But more importantly as well, I did learn about how to keep myself safe and what the law was. And we've got to teach everything to young people about sex. That it's part of a relationship. It's not the only thing in a relationship, it's just one aspect of the relationship. And it needs every other aspect around sex in order to make a healthy relationship. So, next slide please. So, this is why I think we need to talk to our children about, I put relationships and sex. The government call it sex and relationships, SRE, education, but I think it should be relationships and sex, because the relationship becomes first before the sex bit. And also what I've found, have you heard the term beat and delete? Yeah. You heard that term, yeah?
That's it.
It means you hook up with someone on social media, you haven't even met them before, you have sex, and then the person deletes your number. So they don't want anyone to do with you, but they promise you the world. So young women go on thinking, and young boys go and think they're going to be meeting someone, having a relationship, but no. So that's why I like to stress it's about getting to know someone, it's about the relationship. So what we've heard from our previous speaker, it's about understanding the difference between a healthy and an abusive relationship. It's about supporting them so they can develop strategies about resilience. So they know that, it's okay to make mistakes, you can bounce back afterwards, these things are very important. They protect themselves. Understand the law, and that's so important, the law regarding what's legal and illegal around sexual relationships, around sexual exploitation, especially around consent. You know, consent, the definition is you've got the capacity, freedom and choice to be able to have sex with somebody. If you're drunk and you're out of it, you haven't really got the capacity, freedom and choice to make that decision whether you want to have sex with someone. And unfortunately, when a lot of those cases go to court, it's one word against another, and it's very difficult to prove those cases in courts. And there's been some quite high-profile cases some years ago with footballers as well. And I think most of them did get let off because there wasn't any. You know, it's difficult to prove it when it's one person's word against another. So if you're drunk, you know, young people do get drunk at parties. You know, I did it as well. But it's about making sure you keep your friends safe, your parents know where you are, and you let them know, I need to be collected now if you feel like you're so out of it, so they can come and get you. And it's about having that dialogue that they can let parents know, or let an older brother or sister know, or an aunt or a grandparent or a carer, someone know where they are and they need support. Encourage them about a positive communication. You know, we all make mistakes in life, but if we feel like we can talk to our parents and carers and say, look, this is difficult for me to say this, but this happened, I just want you to know. And if you, I'm really glad you told me this, you know, make sure they know these things, that it's okay to make mistakes, we can learn from it. Next slide, please. There's lots of challenges. Lots of challenges. We've heard a lot about social media and the internet. I mean, that is, you know, the access of information you can get hold of, the amount of people you can hook up with. It is frightening out there. Pornography, you know, and I'm going to talk a little bit about that later on. Peer pressure, you know, that peer pressure's always been there, and we'll talk a little bit about more of that later on as well. Social norms, a lot of young people normalise things where it's not normal to us and it's not healthy, so we've got to challenge young people. And, you know, about like beat and delete, you know, in my day you did dating, and dating's become a very old-fashioned word now. I think it's really important we let young people know what fun dating can be and go back to basics, and especially when I go into schools and I talk to boys, I get to think, right, if you like a girl, where would you take her on a date? Let's come up with some ideas of what you can do, you know, whether you've got no money, £2, £5, £10, you think you don't need money, you know, to go on a date, you don't have to go to a fancy restaurant. I think a bag of chips sitting in the park, you know, that's nice. Feeding the ducks afterwards. But you've got to give them these ideas. Celebrity culture, big change with what's going on there. You know, we weren't so interested in celebrities, and we weren't so interested in what they did daily, because they tweet people daily, so you can find out exactly what they're doing. And also about finding the time and the right time. It's so difficult. People talking about, you know, young people who, their children who, you know, are very moody, and you want to have that conversation, and it's not the right time, and it's so difficult. When is the right time? So, with social media, so many young people now have their own computer, have their own mobile phone, which can access the internet, and you know, so that means basically wherever young people go, they can, you know, contact anybody across the world. You think your child's safe in their bedroom? If they're on the internet, they could be groomed by anyone. If we just look at the bottom one, adult groomers can spend 6 hours a day trawling the internet looking for vulnerable young people. Now, what I've learned from young people who have been groomed this way is that an adult will sort of say, oh, hi, how are you, you know? And they'll say, oh, hi back. Goes, oh, have you got any sexy pictures of yourself? Have you got any naked pictures of yourself? Straight away. If a young person ignores them, they will go away. But if a young person says, oh, no, I haven't, I don't do things like that, then they'll keep going and going and going until they get what they want. So what we've got to tell young people, if anyone says to you, can I have some pictures of you, sexualised pictures of you, topless pictures, even underwear or whatever, you say no. You don't say anything. Ignore them and let somebody you trust know. And there's a website called CEOP. Have you heard of CEOP? Child Exploitation Online Protection. CEOP. You can report that to them, and they are wonderfully resourced. They're a government organisation and the Met Police, and they investigate internet crimes for children. And another interesting, the fourth bullet point down, this was 10 years ago, I couldn't find any up-to-date statistics on this, but a third of 9 to 19-year-olds had experienced at least once a week online abuse or bullying. That was 10 years ago. So I don't know what it is now. I presume it will be a lot higher. And, and only 7% of the parents and carers were aware of it. So we've really got to make sure that our IT skills are savvy, so we can really make sure. And I really recommend that parents are on the Facebook pages and other social media, that you get linked up with them. You take away their electronic devices, including mobile phones, at night. You make an agreement. If you want to have this mobile phone that access the internet, if you want to have your own iPad or laptop, the rule is this, that I will take this away from you at 9:30. You've got time to watch a bit of TV, listen to the radio, wind down, but you're not having this. And any time I want to look at your profile or who you're communicating with, then I want to have access to it. Because if you want the responsibility of this equipment, this is the agreement, and you need to be firm. Pornography, wow. Now, pornography, so many young people are groomed and desensitised by people sending them pornography, and that's a lot of things that I learned in my line of work. I didn't know much about pornography. 2 years ago, I completed a dissertation. I was doing a degree in sexual health, and I thought, right, I'm going to do my dissertation on pornography because I want to know what are the effects of young people watching pornography has on them. Are there any effects? Well, some young people said, you're not going to stop us looking at pornography. But what we do want to do is, if we do see something that disturbs us or we're confused about, then we want to make sure we can talk to someone we can trust about that. And what's quite frightening is, well, it was interesting. I compared research papers from sort of before 2000 and those afterwards. The amount of young people that view pornography is the same back in the 90s as it is now. But what is different, back in the 90s it would be Mayfair magazine, or perhaps a dirty video from the 1970s, you know, that somebody had circulated. Now, you just a few clicks of your mobile phone, you can access porn that is absolutely gross, you know, awful, awful abuse. And so although, you know, young people are still accessing, it's the range of images and it's the range of films and what they're seeing. And that's what's very, very concerning. And there is a link, sorry, just to go at the top one, there is definitely research there showed. Yeah, you have, sorry. All right, I'll do it. Back again. No. Yeah, that's it. There is definitely a link between high use of males using, accessing pornography and their sexist views and hostile towards women. So there's actually research that, you know, we've probably all thought that, but there's some research to prove that. Okay. Yeah. Peer pressure. So, a bit of science now. My dad would be very proud of me. He was a science teacher, but I wasn't very good at science. But now I've got my Bachelor of Science in Sexual Health, so he's proud of me again, right? Because when I failed the science at school. He said, don't tell them I'm a science teacher. Right, anyway, so I'm going to do the science bit now. Right. What's really interesting is our brains don't fully develop until we're about 25 years old. So, and it's the prefrontal cortex part of our brain, and there's lots of research around this at the moment. I find it really, really interesting because it makes a lot of sense. The prefrontal cortex part controls the impulsivity, planning, and prioritize. I can't say that word. Thank you. Of our brain. So that affects our decision-making processes. So the brain is wired to sensation-seeking and behaviour and experimentation. So when there's peer pressure on young people, it's more difficult for them to be able to make that rational thought because their brain's not fully wired up. I'm not giving teenagers an excuse, but it's scientific fact. They're not fully wired up yet to make those decisions. And there's been some really interesting research out there. And I would, if you're interested in that, go and have a look what's out there. So it's more challenging for teenagers to put aside peer pressure and make sensible choices. But this is why it's so important that we give young people the skills of resilience. That if they go against their peers, don't worry, It just shows you're a strong person, you're thinking your own thoughts, you don't have to follow them. And if they don't want to be friends with you, good riddance to them. There's plenty of nice people out there. And if they, and if you say no to them, they might learn a lesson and think about it themselves and think, yeah, you were actually right. So we've got to make young people strong so they can make their own decisions. And what's interesting about social norms, that's the difference between, them, that perceived behaviour of what is reality and what, and what it isn't. So if they think everyone's having sex because everyone says they're having sex, there probably isn't reality, that's just teen talk. But it's about making sure, they haven't got to have sex with someone because all their friends say they are. And it's still the average age of having sex for the first time is still 16, and it's been that for a long time. So things haven't changed. Next slide, please. So another challenge is about parents, knowledge, confidence, and getting support. And, we've got to be brave. And I have to be brave in my line of work in that, when I first started working with sexually exploited young people, I remember when I had to work for a 13-year-old for the first time, oh my gosh, I can't talk to them about this at 13. And then, the youngest I worked with was 10, and it's like, I had to be challenged all the time, and we do have to be challenged, and, but there are lots of resources out there, and I'm going to talk through some of them later. But it's, get all your resources together, because you don't know when that golden moment's going to be to have those conversations. It's okay not to know everything. Sometimes young people ask me things and I think, I don't know. But I know someone who does, and next week when I see you, I'll tell them, or, why don't we go down to the clinic and let's see if we can speak to someone and get the answers you need, So it's okay not to know everything. And you may have people there that can support you. You may have a friend who's a nurse or something. Oh gosh, could you tell me about this so I can tell it to my children? So build up those networks. Use professionals, use other family members, and use your own strength. Newspapers. Lots of really good articles in the paper. We've had all the stuff about celebrity culture. This one, children should be given sex education from 5 to protect them from innocence. Well, when you actually read it, it's not sex education. It's about, understanding your body parts. And this is what's really important. And then someone said earlier on about we need to have these conversations when they're at primary school, and that's so true. Research shows that if children know the right names for their body parts, if they know penis and vagina, If somebody tries to abuse them, they say, oh, don't touch my penis, don't touch my vagina, then that scares the potential abuser and they'll leave that child alone because they know they can go back and tell them exactly what happened to an adult. So it's so important we just do things. And when we see things like this, it's scare tactics. It's not, don't be scared by it. This is a positive thing and it's always age appropriate. And an interesting thing with Australia, they banned Chris Brown from going in there. This was in the papers last month. 6 years after he attacked Rihanna, they wouldn't let him in the country. So well done, Australia, for that. That's a good thing to have a conversation with young people about, boys as well as girls. Look at the consequences 6 years down the line, right? FPA, I don't know if I have bought some of these leaflets here today if you want to have a look at them. These are brilliant. FPA stands for the Family Planning Association. Oh, wow, thank you. So if you want to have a look at these, they are just so good. I'm such a fan of these. They're always updating them. But for $8.99, you get a booklet for yourself around talking to young people around sex and relationships. And these things, I'm always reading these myself because they're just so well written and they educate us. So before you talk to your children or young people that you work with, read them yourself. You will learn loads. They're very, like the girls one, 4 girls, it's called the Below the Bra Guide for girls. And the one for boys, Below the Belt Guide for boys, So it's just really got a bit of humour in there as well. Next slide, please. There's lots of soap operas, EastEnders, Hollyoaks, Emmerdale, Coronation Street, all those things. They have brilliant storylines every now and again that we can use to have those conversations. Make sure you watch a soap with your children so you can wait for that storyline to have that conversation. Okay. You mentioned Victoria Murdered by Your Boyfriend, that is heavy stuff. But it may be something to watch when you're having, something to watch with our children, both male and female. We've got to have these conversations. We've got, and this is a really powerful tool. There's other films, music videos, have a conversation. Always express your opinion, but always ask the young person what their opinion is as well. And what I find working with young people, that if they tell me something, and I think, oh, that's a bit odd, I get them to explain it to me. And then when they've explained it to me, oh yeah, I understand where you're coming from now. It's always get them to explain their opinion, and it does make sense. So there's lots of organisations there. See up there, Think You Know. That's what, they've got loads of videos. They're really well resourced. Think You Know. They're just brilliant. Loads of videos there. And there's stuff there to help parents as well. And you can report to them. They're all singing, all dancing. See up. Wonderful. Right. Last slide. How could children and parents help each other? Well, be open to your parents and carers about your friendship. So encourage, get your children to, who are your friends? Get them over. Even if they mess up your house and they're noisy, you need to know who they are. Because as we saw from that film, from a friend, she gets to meet the boys. So you need to know where they're going to be meeting people. Meet the boyfriends, the girlfriends of children. And sometimes I've made presumptions working with young people who've been sexually exploited. I worked with one girl, I made the presumption that she, was interested in boys, and then she came out with me halfway through working that she actually, even though she'd been sexually exploited by boys, she was actually identified herself as a lesbian. But I hadn't been open-minded, so I learned a powerful lesson there. Again, with boys I've worked with who've been sexually exploited by men, I mustn't presume that they may be, might be bisexual, they may be straight, but they've been abused and groomed by a man. So we've always got to make sure we keep things open so they can, have those conversations with us about their sexuality. So make sure you meet the boyfriends and girlfriends. I work with one mother who's 16-year-old, who'd been sexually exploited twice through gangs. She'd met a really nice lad who was doing his A-levels. I met him. mother wouldn't meet him. No, in my culture, we don't meet the boyfriends until they're old. I said, she's meeting him in secret. Surely you want to know who he is. And when she's meeting, so you don't have to meet in secret. But she was so resistant. I even took pictures of him to show, because he was a lovely lad. I'm thinking, I'd be so proud if my daughter brought him home. You know, he went off to university. You know, it was good stuff. But she just wouldn't, and you know, and I couldn't persuade her at all, and it was so upset. And then the whole relationship between her and her daughter broke down. I just thought something so simple. She'd only invited him over for tea or something like that. I know tea's a bit an old-fashioned word, but you know what I mean. Sorry. So make sure you have that one-to-one time, doing a fun activity together. And when you've got a large family, it's difficult to find it. You've got other responsibilities, but do find that time. Be brave. Check out with each other. Make sure you can have those difficult conversations. Respect each other's boundaries. Don't go on and on and on and on, because that's what teenagers say. Oh my God, every time I talk to them, they just go on and on and on about the past. Have that break. Give yourself, well, I'm going to lecture you for 1 minute and then I'm going to shut up. Time yourself, and get into that habit, and just make sure we say, I love you. Yeah. Sorry, I know.